Hello and welcome to Declan Dad Gaming. This is your host Dad, otherwise known as Chris. Today we're doing a review on Borderlands 3, so let's hear what they have to say about it. The original looter shooter returns, packing bazillions of guns and a mayhem-fueled adventure. Blast through new worlds and enemies as one of 4 new Vault Hunters. Play solo with friends, take on insane enemies, score loads of loot, and save your home from the most ruthless cult leaders in the galaxy. As most of you guys are already probably pretty familiar with the franchise, it's a looter shooter, first person view, and it's pretty crazy. Rather than wasting too much time trying to explain to you guys exactly what Borderlands 3 is, because most of you will be familiar with that, let's just delve right in. We'll have a look at the options and the settings. So Borderlands 3 is really well fleshed out when it comes to the options and the settings, both from a visual perspective as well as many other customizable options. I did hear initially there seemed to be some key binding issues. However, I haven't experienced any issues with this, and it appears as though you can rebind it as you please. Typically I just play with the standard just to avoid being disappointed just in case you can't rebind, but either way it seems like it's fairly customizable and there shouldn't really be any dramas there. Jumping into a game with a friend's really easy, although it does take a little bit of getting used to with the menu options and all that kind of thing and how it actually functions, but once you get used to it, it's basically fine. There's no real dramas there. So yeah, you can just jump straight in, help out a friend. To sum it up, look, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed the game, so I'll just put that out there straight away. However, let's start with some of the negatives. Starting a new game. So if you start a new character or a new game, you cannot skip the intro, which is super frustrating. However, that being said, if you've completed the game with a character and you start a new game with that character or continue on to true Vault Hunter mode, which is the next difficulty up, it does give you the option to skip the intro, which is obviously most welcome because I don't want to see that again. So I'd recommend when you first get the game, perhaps start a new game with each character and in between maybe have a snack or go watch a TV show or something while that intro is playing, because it takes quite a long time. Another negative for me was, to a certain extent, the story. I thought, considering the universe that they've carved out and how cool it actually is, I sort of expected more to come out of the story. I mean, this is really typical of the Borderlands franchise anyway. If you're already familiar with those titles, the story is normally sort of weak, but the universe that they exist in is actually quite fleshed out and quite cool. So I thought they could perhaps do a lot more with the story as far as that goes. But honestly, in the grand scheme of things, I didn't care that much, because most of the time you're not worried about the story, you're just having fun shooting things. Another annoying thing was the characters, and if you've watched any other reviews, you've probably heard quite a bit about this. The villains in this are really annoying. Yeah, I mean, considering the villains in Borderlands 2, even Borderlands pre-sequel, and even the first one were at least a little bit more interesting. In particular, Borderlands 2, I think they did a really good job there. Borderlands 3, not so much. These villains are really annoying. And the jokes and the humour's just, I don't know whether it's just old and boring now, or whether I'm just old and boring now. I'm not sure. So there's that. And for me, probably last but not least, optimization. Now, I've heard a lot of people have had major dramas when it comes to the optimization of the game and how it runs. I really haven't had that many issues. I am playing on a GTX 1080 Ti with a Ryzen 7 2700X, and you would expect that plays well, and it does. I haven't had any dramas. I've mostly played it on 1440p. I've done some recording in 1080p, and I have not had any dramas. Although, that being said, strange quirk, it seems to run pretty bad in any of the menus. I get real frame drops when it comes to just opening my inventory, and I don't mean just upon opening it, I mean navigating through the inventory. It seems quite clunky and quite chunky. So it's sort of weird. The game itself, when I'm in the game and shooting things and all that kind of stuff, it plays really well, it plays really smoothly, looks great. I haven't had any dramas there, but the menus are a real oddity to me. Anyway, now that we've got the negatives out of the way, what are some of the positives? The positives are that the negatives don't really mean much. I didn't care too much about the negatives, and I had to find those negatives because I really didn't focus on them, and they didn't take away from the gaming experience at all. I mean, you're not going to buy a Borderlands game for the story. You're obviously buying it usually to play with friends as a looter shooter, or even solo as a looter shooter is fine. The graphics look great, the effects are brilliant, the sound's quite nice. The music's a bit of a miss. I mean, I typically turn the music down or off when I'm playing these kinds of games anyway, but I thought it was pretty average, and I did experience a few bugs in which I'd finish a boss battle with the music on, and that music would continue to loop until I jumped out of the game. So, I don't know, be mindful of that. If you care a lot about the music, you might be a little bit disappointed, but everything else in regards to sound is really, really good, and the graphics, they just look really nice. It's the same as what you'd expect from Borderlands, the same style and art, but it does look really polished, and all the effects and the explosions that take place and all that kind of stuff look really, really good. That being said, it can be really confusing sometimes when you're in a really heated firefight and there's a lot going on. Sometimes you cannot see the enemy at all. There's that much going on in front of you that I couldn't make out a thing. And depending on what kind of characters you're playing with, in particular when you've got some Beastmasters with you, which is Flak, he's the robot, he can have a friend that carries along with you and attacks enemies, which is pretty cool, although they get in the way a lot and I end up trying to shoot them heaps of the time, because one of them's a skag, and then there's some other little things as well that I just typically try and aim at and try and kill, not realizing that it's actually my friend. Another thing is the amount of loot. There is a lot of loot, and I mean, if you were to stand there and go through every gun in detail to try and determine which gun's the best that you should be using for each slot that you've got, which is 4, you could potentially spend more time doing that than actually playing the game. I found the best way for me to play was to treat it a little bit more like I was playing Doom 2016, in which I'd just rush through, although with a little bit more strategy. You do have to be a little bit more careful, but rush through. If the gun isn't of certain colours, because there's rarity in colours. You've got your typical white/grey, which is rubbish, green, which is a little bit better, blue, which is better yet, purple, and then orange, which is legendary. If it wasn't blue, I generally would avoid picking it up, although I'd still pick up some of the greens if I was a little bit lean on cash and I wanted to build up a cash reservoir. But other than that, I'd run in, I'd shoot, take whatever I thought was necessary and just move on. I wouldn't dwell on anything. Half the time I just sold those guns without even looking at them, which in hindsight is probably a stupid thing, but you'd find guns that you do like, and then I just found it easier to stick with them until I really, really needed to upgrade. Navigation around the maps improved a bit, a lot better than Borderlands pre-sequel. I remember running around there and just getting really, really frustrated revisiting areas. At least in this, you can fast travel without having to actually go to a station, which is a pretty welcome feature, because I don't like spending a lot of time just running in empty nothingness or going back through areas that I've already killed everyone only to find that they're back alive again. So being able to fast travel from anywhere is really, really nice. When you do finally make your way to Sanctuary, you'll probably notice that it's a pretty confusing area. It takes a long time to learn the layout and is pretty frustrating at the start. You do get used to it, but I still think it would have been nicer if they compressed all the features in there and kept it all together so it was easier to access everything when you wanted to. However, like I said, you do get used to it, and it's a minor gripe. The gunplay itself is excellent. I don't think I've played a better game when it comes to the gunplay. Really, really satisfying shooting. Although the enemies, in typical Borderlands fashion, are real bullet soaks. That they will just take a pounding. You can shoot them in the head sometimes 10 times and they're still not going down. For those of you who've played previous iterations of Borderlands, you'd understand that that's just par for the course. And it doesn't take away too much from what you're playing. That's just the nature of the game, and you do get used to it. And I quite like it. It means that there's a lot of variation in enemies, and you can't just slug them in the head and kill them straight away. So sometimes you have to employ different strategies as a result, which is quite nice. The different environments are nice. It's nice just not being on a desolate desert planet anymore. However, I mean, the fact that you're traveling to different planets, because the story's pretty light, doesn't make a great deal of difference. It could be on the same planet for all I care, just with different environments. It's just reskinned environments. It is nice looking at something different though, I will give it that. As mentioned before, jumping into games with friends is super easy, super satisfying, really, really good co-op shooter game. Probably one of the best I've ever played as far as that's concerned. It's always fun running around with your friends and shooting things. And there's probably not enough really good co-op shooters out there, at least not that I know of, and I'm always looking for them because we've got 3 PCs here. My other half plays with us, and my son, who's 14 years old, also plays these games with us, so we like to get together and party up and go shooting. And this is definitely satisfying us. On top of just being an all-round good co-op shooter, they have implemented features that weren't previously available with the other Borderlands, in which the loot is personalised to you. So when, and this is an option that you can turn off for the record, but I don't know why you would. So when you shoot an enemy or open a chest and there's special guns in there, or the enemy drops some guns, you don't share the loot. It's not first in, best dressed, which is great because my 14-year-old son would always jump in and steal everything. So it's quite nice to have personalised loot. They can't see what you can see and vice versa. However, if you want to drop a gun or trade with them, something that you've picked up, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, any drops or any open chests or anything is all yours and no one else's, which is, well, for me, quite nice. The boss battles are really cool. I really enjoyed them. If you're trying to employ a strategy for it, you know, it's basically shoot, run, shoot, run, shoot, run. If you're playing with friends, I wouldn't even bother reviving them. Half the time I found when we were trying to revive each other in these boss battles, which you don't always have to do, sometimes there's computer allies there that help out as well. But there's as soon as you go to revive them, you'd end up getting killed, and then you'd both have to start from scratch. If one of the players in your team is still alive, and you get killed, you can join at the battle exactly where it's at. If you both get killed at the same time and end up having to respawn, then that battle's reset. So we found the best way to go about it was not bother not bother reviving each other, and simply letting that person respawn and rejoin the battle. And that way you can keep going from where you're already at. As of this moment, I've put in 38 hours. Some of that time I've gone back to help out friends level up and all that kind of thing and progress the story. I have just finished the game probably about 2 or 3 hours ago and started a new game in true Vault Hunter mode. Now, so probably, and I'll rush through quite a bit of it. I didn't do many of the side quests because I just don't find them that enjoyable. I would say you'd probably finish the game within 30 hours quite easily if you're any good, which sounds actually quite light on, but I can't help feeling now that I'm in true Vault Hunter mode that the game is really just starting after you've already finished the game once. There's a lot more options to up the difficulty, and I dare say the second playthrough will definitely be longer because it's much more difficult, depending on the choices you make, obviously, as well. But you do have to strategize more. It's not always just simply a run and gun. Sometimes you'll decide that you need to flank the enemy while someone's tanking, a little bit like an MMORPG, or even that you need to hang back, pick them off, move forward, maybe even drop back. So there's a surprising amount of strategy to employ in a game that normally you would consider just to be a run and gun, hold the trigger down and hope for the best. Anyway, I don't want to drone on too much more than I already have. I really enjoyed the game. As far as a co-op shooter goes, it's really good. The game's quite polished. I haven't experienced many issues. I have had one crash, but that was minor. There are a couple of other minor, more cosmetic bugs that I've experienced, but nothing game-breaking. If you're looking for a good co-op shooter to play with your friends, or even solos, not too bad, I'd highly recommend this game. Just don't bank on a good story, and bank on really annoying characters. The voice acting's excellent. I can't knock the voice acting. The script's just horrible, though. I really didn't enjoy that element of it. Again, I'm probably showing signs of my age, getting a little bit old and not enjoying this kind of humor as much as I may have 20 years ago. But yeah, if you like that kind of thing, go grab it. If not, probably stay well away from it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Enjoy.